There is a simple liquid that costs exactly $2 to mix right in your own kitchen. It has the undeniable power to take gray, cracking, sun-destroyed wood and permanently restore it to the exact condition it was in the day it left the lumberyard. This isn't a surface-level paint designed to hide the damage, and it certainly isn't a flashy commercial stain that will inevitably peel, flake, and fade after 6 short months in the brutal summer sun. This liquid actually penetrates deep into the grain, chemically rebuilding the entire cellular structure of the wood from the inside out. Wipe just one single coat onto a rotting backyard fence, and your neighbors will assume you just spent a fortune replacing every single board. Drag a soaked rag across a weathered silver deck, and that contractor you were about to call will instantly lose a $1,000 job. Antique furniture that looks ready for the local landfill suddenly transforms, looking as vibrant and deeply nourished as if it were sitting in a high-end luxury showroom. There is no heavy sanding required, there are no expensive power tools needed, and you absolutely do not need any professional woodworking experience to pull this off. This secret formula has existed for a very long time, actively used long before the outbreak of the Second World War. In the 1930s, every master craftsman knew this recipe by heart. Cabinet makers treated it like a treasured family heirloom, passing it down from generation to generation. But then, the massive home restoration industry realized a devastating truth. If everyday homeowners discovered how to make this liquid themselves, they would never need to pick up the phone and hire a contractor ever again. A $2 DIY bottle replacing a $900 maintenance service is a financial disaster that massive corporate conglomerates simply could not allow. So, they buried it. They didn't suppress it because it failed. They suppressed it because it worked far too well. If you are ready to uncover the truths they tried to erase, hit the subscribe button. Welcome to the vault. Let's rewind the clock and look at where this formula actually came from. In 1860, a British inventor named Frederick Walton noticed something incredibly strange happening in his London workshop. A thick, rubbery skin had formed over a vat of linseed oil that he had carelessly left open overnight. That rubbery film was tougher than commercial varnish and significantly more flexible than traditional shellac. Walton quickly realized that the linseed oil was reacting directly with the oxygen in the air, creating a completely natural, highly durable polymer. He spent the next 3 years perfecting this chemical process, and by 1863, he had invented linoleum, the first mass-produced floor covering in history, built entirely from the natural extract of flax seeds. But the historical footprint of this oil goes back much further than Victorian England, tracing back over 20,000 years. Flax is one of the oldest cultivated crops on Earth, famously grown in ancient Mesopotamia. Egyptian tombs still hold woven linen fabrics that remain perfectly intact after more than 4 millennia. In ancient China, visionary woodworkers discovered that pressing these tiny flax seeds produced a golden oil that penetrated deep into wood and hardened over several weeks to form an impenetrable shield. This was humanity's first documented wood finish. It wasn't a synthetic polyurethane plastic pumped out of a chemical plant. It was just oil from a seed, pressed entirely by hand. For centuries across Europe, every shipwright and furniture maker relied heavily on linseed oil. Medieval builders mixed it with lead oxide to create boiled linseed oil, forcing it to cure and harden incredibly fast. The massive, heavy cathedral doors in Germany treated with this exact oil in the 1500s are still standing strong today. The legendary warships of the British Royal Navy coated their wooden decks with linseed oil before crossing the Atlantic, and that treated lumber survived brutal saltwater, scorching tropical suns, and enemy cannon fire. And then, everything changed. In the 1950s, the booming petrochemical industry introduced synthetic alkyd resins. Polyurethane, artificial lacquers, and chemical varnishes violently flooded the consumer market. These man-made products took less time to apply, looked artificially glossy right out of the can, and most importantly, they offered infinitely higher profit margins for the manufacturers. Producing natural linseed oil cost mere pennies per gallon, while synthetic finishes were expensive to buy and specifically engineered to require the consumer to reapply them every 2 to 3 years. The chemical industry didn't switch because the new products were inherently better for the wood. They switched because the new products generated relentless, recurring revenue straight from your wallet. And so, the ancient formula quietly vanished from hardware store shelves. Look at the raw numbers. The wood restoration industry generates nearly $2 billion every single year just from product sales alone. This segment is ruthlessly dominated by giant corporations like 3M, Sherwin-Williams, and Howard Products. Zooming out, the broader home improvement market in the United States has reached a staggering annual revenue of $210 billion. $210 billion. That is the sheer size of the machine profiting directly from your lack of knowledge. The national average cost to have a contractor refinish a standard 200 square foot backyard deck is $980. The labor costs alone for a 1 to 3 day job range wildly from $600 to $1,400. Having a professional shop restore a single piece of vintage furniture costs anywhere from $300 to $800. The industry actively recommends that you redo your hardwood floors and decks every 2 to 3 years. That means over 20 years of homeownership, you are throwing nearly $7,000 at a wooden platform in your backyard, something you could easily maintain yourself for under $10.
The mechanism behind this cover-up is brilliant in its simplicity. You cannot patent boiled linseed oil, white vinegar, or turpentine because they are some of the oldest natural materials known to man. No patent means no monopoly, and no monopoly means you cannot build a billion-dollar brand. Their entire business model relies entirely on you believing that wood care requires expensive, heavily marketed products with flashy commercial names. The hard science behind this formula will permanently change how you look at every piece of lumber in your home. At the molecular level, linseed oil is a triglyceride, boasting an unusually high concentration of alpha-linolenic acid. When you rub this oil into bare wood, it does not just sit lazily on the surface, it dives deep into the cellular structure of the board itself. The fatty acid chains begin to cross-link with one another through active oxidation, forming a flexible, resilient polymer network that fills every microscopic pore. Unlike a plastic polyurethane shell that easily cracks, blisters, and peels in the sun, linseed oil actually becomes a physical part of the wood. A detailed study published in the Journal of Coatings Technology confirmed that linseed oil penetrates up to 4 times deeper into the wood grain than modern synthetic polyurethane. Now, we add white vinegar to the mix. Vinegar is essentially acetic acid, a powerful natural solvent that effectively cuts through decades of built-up grime, heavy oxidation, and dead surface finishes without tearing apart the healthy wood fibers underneath. The third ingredient is the master key that unlocks the formula's true power: turpentine, specifically pure gum spirits. Turpentine dramatically thins the heavy linseed oil, allowing it to penetrate twice as deep and cure twice as fast. With turpentine in the mix, the solution flashes into the wood in mere minutes and begins vulcanizing within hours. The total cost for these 3 ingredients at any local hardware store is literally under $2 per application. A quart of boiled linseed oil runs about $4. A gallon of distilled white vinegar costs under $3. And a small tin of turpentine costs around $5, which will easily last you for months. I need to be brutally honest with you right now. There is a deadly safety warning that almost every DIY channel completely ignores. Rags soaked in boiled linseed oil can and will spontaneously combust if left crumpled up in a pile. In 1991, a massive fire caused entirely by improperly stored linseed oil rags completely gutted the One Meridian Plaza building in Philadelphia, tragically killing 3 firefighters. You must always lay your used rags perfectly flat outside to dry, or submerge them entirely in a sealed metal can filled with water before throwing them away. Here is exactly how you mix this magic solution. Gather your 3 ingredients: boiled linseed oil, ensure the label specifically says boiled, distilled white vinegar, and pure gum spirits turpentine. Mix them in exactly equal parts, a 1:1:1 ratio, inside a heavy glass jar with a tight-fitting lid. Shake the jar violently for about 30 seconds until the mixture fully emulsifies into a cloudy, golden liquid. Clean your wood surface thoroughly with a dry, stiff brush. Dip a clean cotton rag into the mixture and apply it heavily along the grain in smooth, deliberate strokes, working in 2-foot sections at a time. Let the first coat soak in deeply for 10 to 15 minutes, and then absolutely ensure you wipe off any excess standing liquid with a dry cloth. Wait 24 hours and then apply a second coat using the exact same method to double the protective barrier. For a badly weathered deck, start with the most damaged, silvered board first. The gray oxidation will melt away the second the vinegar hits it, and the golden oil will rush into the thirsty grain in seconds. For hardwood floors, apply it in very thin, even coats using a flat mop. A single quart-sized batch of this mixture will easily cover 30 to 40 square feet of surface area. You just did that with under $2 in materials and 20 minutes of your free time. A professional floor restoration company would quote you $3 to $7 per square foot, turning a small 200 square foot room into a painful $1,400 invoice. This knowledge didn't vanish because it stopped working.
It vanished because it worked so incredibly well that an entire industry had to pretend it never existed. Your grandparents knew this formula. The contractors definitely know this formula. A multi-billion-dollar industry prays every single day that you never learn what you just watched. But now you hold the key. The wood isn't dead. It is just waiting for someone to remember what the industry forced us to forget. If this video brought you value, hit the subscribe button and share it with someone who needs it. Every share is a strike against the corporate monopoly.